So yeah, welcome back from lunch. And I'm very excited for this mindfulness session. No offense to the fantastic sessions that we've had so far, but I'm looking forward to seeing what Sarahlynn has for us today. I was feeling very relaxed after the movement group yesterday and didn't move for about half an hour. Just sat on the floor. I was so chilled. It was lovely. Yeah, the focus of the day is mindfulness, and a lot of what we're focusing on through the week is well-being. We know that this is going to be fantastic, and I mean, I might be a little bit biased because Sarahlynn is well-being lead for Qualified Tutor. She's been the kind of well-being flag bearer for the Qualified Tutor team since the last festival, and has pretty much been keeping us going this week. I think lots of fantastic support that everyone should have been receiving through their emails about World Tutors Day, which is the next big event on Saturday, and lots of well-being tips being shared for that. So I would recommend, if you haven't noticed that in the emails, have a look for @World Tutors Day on social media. There's a lot of valuable content shared in there, and it's not just this week. You can find the content whenever you need it. So, yeah, thank you very much, Sarahlynn. Let's chill out.
Okay, so obviously, as Georgina said, my name is Sarahlynn. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the founder of Bettering Yout, so an academic tutoring company that blends in emotional well-being coaching, and the founder of Mindful Toolbox, so a space for teens to acquire the tools to get stuff done. And as Georgina mentioned, I am also in your inboxes all this week and whenever you want for the well-being part of this amazing festival, as well as World Tutors Day on July 2nd. So I'm very excited that you are here today to prioritize your well-being. I don't have as intense of a setup as I did yesterday, on Monday. So hopefully I will be able to be present here with you, but please know that I do have some notes because I want to make sure that I don't go off on too many tangents, and I make this as valuable as possible for you. So today we're going to explore mindfulness and how it can help us lean into thoughts that support us. So a little bit of housekeeping. First and foremost, I'd like to invite you to keep your screens on. We are a community. That's what I'm all about. That's what Qualified Tutor is all about. And it really helps me feel like I'm not just talking to myself. So I do appreciate that. The second part is that this is going to be an interactive workshop. I am all about having a conversation with all of us. I want to make it as, relatable as possible. So feel free to put stuff up in the chat box. I have that up as well. So hopefully I can see all of your lovely messages as they come through. And if you were with us on Monday, you can attest to how powerful that chat box can be. Lastly, please just have an open mind. So we are going to be digging into some big feelings, and some might be triggering, but I want to remind you that you are in a safe space and you are going to be fantastic. So let's begin together. We're going to start by just grounding into our breath. So if we just want to sit up nice and tall, heart's reaching up towards the sky, maybe place a hand on your heart, a hand on your belly, whatever you feel like. We're just going to take 3 nice big deep breaths. Now, as we finish, I'm just going to encourage you to join me in a box breath. So we're going to breathe in for a count of 4, hold it in for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, and hold it out for a count of 4. And we're going to do that 2 rounds. Here we go, breathing in. Hold. Let it out. Hold it out. And in. Hold it in. And out. Hold it out. Good. Go ahead, give yourself a little wiggle. Maybe open your eyes if they were closed. So breath is an important part of mindfulness because it helps us to get really grounded and present. But the breath work is not the only thing that's going to allow us to do that. The other part of mindfulness, and one that maybe we don't speak so much about, is the awareness and the reflection. So today's plan, first and foremost, I want to introduce you to 10 different distortion thought patterns. We're going to dig into the most common, and then we're going to share 3 ways that we can use mindfulness to lessen the time that we spend in fear and worry and increase the time that we get back to the present moment. Okay, so as you can see today, hi Karen, we don't have any fun slideshow that's packed with friends memes. I really did want this to be an open conversation, kind of like sitting across from each other on a sofa. So you can do that either by speaking out or putting it in the chat box. I don't mind which one. What I do have though are some notes that I've mentioned up on my screen, and I do have a couple of cue cards because I do appreciate that sometimes verbal stimulus can be a lot on the brain. So I do want to be able to give you a little bit of support with what I'm talking about with some cue notes. I will hold them up to the screen. You can see my gorgeous writing. It's not the best, but it is there nonetheless. Okay. So to get us started then, what I'd like to know from you is if you already are aware of what thought distortion is. Do we have any ideas of what it is to have distorted thoughts? Can you maybe think of one of them? There's 10 different ones. So I'm going to give you an idea just to... Helen is distorting your thoughts. This is quite possible.
Sorry, Jack.
Mind reading people's thoughts. That's a really good one. Karen, can you elaborate on that?
So I think just guessing situations or how people are going to react without actually speaking to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When we feel like we're going to just assume how people are going to take things without even giving them the opportunity to have their own feelings. And Georgina, I saw that you put something in there as well. Would you like to elaborate on that one?
Yeah, I was having trouble putting that into a concise phrase, to be fair, but it's essentially when we have our own beliefs about ourselves and others, that when we're interpreting something, we're kind of adding that to the picture and perhaps moving away from the reality of the picture. Absolutely.
So it's almost like our own experiences color our vision of what's in front of us, and that can shift and shape what our perspective is going to be. I love that. So there are actually 10 different ones, and we've covered 2 of them right now. So we're going to go through them. What I would like for you to do while we talk about each of them, we're going to run through them quite quickly because I want to spend more time looking at the top 3. But to help us identify the top 3, I'd like for you to scale yourself. So on a level of 1 to 7, how often do you feel like you catch yourself thinking in this kind of distorted format? So we are going to begin with the first one. The first one is overgeneralization. So overgeneralization is when we come to the wrong conclusion, right? It's where we feel as though we may have, we might have an idea of something from past experience, and we think that everything is always going to end up that way. The next one is polarized ideas. So this is your, I am a failure or I am a success. There is no in between. It's that typical black and white thinking. So if you want to pop them in the chat box, we can do that there. You can pop them on your paper and we can tally them together after. The choice is yours. But I did see a couple nods along the way. The next one is catastrophizing. So this is when we come to a conclusion that everything is always going to end up very, very wrong. Catastrophizing. All right, the next one, yeah, it's high for a lot of people, I think, is personalization. So personalization is when we think everything has to do with us. So if someone comes to you and they're having a bad day, your immediate thought is, oh my gosh, I've made them very angry at me. Why are they so angry at me? Their feelings may have nothing to do with you, but you just take that on. It's your personal approach. This next one is the one that Karen had mentioned for us, and that is mind reading. When we assume what other people are thinking, or how other people are feeling in certain situations. Yeah, I think I'm psychic sometimes, Karen says. I think we all have that. The next one is mental filtering. Mental filtering means that you are only going to be looking for either the negative or the positive. Tends to be towards the negative side. So for instance, your partner may have done all of these wonderful things for you, cooked and cleaned and blah, 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 but they didn't make your favorite food. So how could they not make your favorite food on such an important day for you? It's only picking up the things that they didn't do. Next one is discounting the positives. So it's very similar to mental filtering. It's when someone does something that's positive, but we don't hold it to the same level or the same value. Now, Jack, you're going to love this one. These are the should statements, right? They are the thieves of joy, which I'm constantly reminded of. These are what we expect we must be doing, even though there's no real rules that tell us that that's the case. And we're not always challenging those rules. Next, we have emotional reasoning. Emotional reasoning is when we are taking our emotions on as fact. So you might start to feel butterflies in your stomach and your heart rate, and you're going to label that as fear. And you're going to say, okay, I must be then fearful of heights. It might not be true. You might actually be feeling excitement, right? We feel excitement and fear in very similar ways. But if you're mental filtering, only looking to the negative, and then you're also emotional reasoning, you might have a very distorted outcome or a very distorted thought. Next, we have labeling. So labeling is when you say something that is either good or it's bad, or you might label yourself. I am a failure. I am not good at maths. I am an overachiever. I am a people pleaser. These are all labels that we use. And a lot of times it creates thought patterns that may not even be in alignment with who we are. So those are our 10 different thought distortions. I had some really good comments here in the chat box. So Karen says sometimes being really quick to judge. Absolutely. I feel like that's something that we all need some support. I know I need some support. I don't want to speak on your behalf. Georgina says she loves labeling herself. Yes, for some reason, it's what society is constantly doing, right? Which is why we're struggling as a society so much with understanding the different types of labels that are coming up and the different categories that we want to put people into. And we're realizing that people are so fluid that we can't always be put into that box. The shoulds, the dreaded shoulds, absolutely. Right? If you don't mind just taking a peek over your analysis or your tally of the ones that you really feel like you catch yourself constantly doing. And if we pop them either in the chat box or you could just say them out loud. That's okay. The first one, Georgina, was overgeneralization. So that's when you come to that conclusion from the past. And so you just constantly generalize. They must always be that way. Helen, you don't have to put all of them in there. Maybe just choose your top 3. Exactly. Yeah. When you decide you're a bad student. So for instance, overgeneralization. Exactly. I could easily tell you that I'm awful at maths because I pretty much failed elementary maths. I was constantly being told that I wasn't getting maths right. And then I went to secondary school and I had fantastic teachers who spent so much extra time teaching me that it actually wasn't that I wasn't good at math. It's that I just didn't connect with the people who were teaching me. And I didn't feel like I could be present in the classroom because I had a lot of things that I was going through as a child. And so when we overgeneralize, we open ourselves up to finding ourselves with a label that may not actually be true. So we have here our top distorted ideas. Fatima, welcome. Today we are looking at thought distortions. I've just gone through the 10, and now in the chat box, we're just talking about which ones we see quite commonly. So we have polarized thoughts. So it's either good or it's bad. I am a failure or I'm a success. There is no in between. We have should statements, right? I should be doing this. I should be thinking that. For Karen, she thinks mind reading and overgeneralization are her top ones. And we have the 4th and the 10th, Georgina. You're going to make me go through them again to figure out which one was the 4th and the 10th. We have 1, 2, 3. Personalization. Yes, that was the 4th. And then the 10th one is when we have our emotional labeling. There we go. Thank you, Jack. On the ball. Discounting the positives is for Helen, and those shoulds. So those shoulds seem to be coming up quite often. And it's because those are the ones that we live in. Hi, Mary Jane, welcome. We are just going over the different thought distortions that we may be experiencing. And then we've just gone through and identified which ones we tend to find our brain picking up the most. Now, what's interesting, I think, is that we can see that not everyone has the same thought distortions. So right here, we have a learning opportunity, because if I'm always doing the shoulds, which Jack always pulls me up on, which is good, and I'm constantly catastrophizing and fortune telling, thinking what's going to happen and imagining the worst, then these are the perspectives that I'm coming from. So when I'm speaking to you and you're telling me your worries and your fears, I'm going to be putting my worries and my fears onto you, when that's actually maybe not at all where you're coming from. Maybe you're coming from a position of personalizing or labeling. So just by being aware of these different types, thank you, Jack, for putting them in the chat, of these different types of distorted thought patterns, yes, we can start checking our own thoughts, but maybe we can start being more aware of the thought patterns that our students hold as well. So we can hold space for them to actually dig into them a little bit more, right? Knowledge is power. So if we can help them label it, then we can help them move through it. So knowing that, then, I want to go through what 3 ways we can use mindfulness in order to help us kind of work through these, so we can spend more time with those thoughts that are actually going to support us rather than the thoughts that might be distorting things for us. But before I do that, let me just please say that, yes, you may have heard me referred to as the well-being lead or the wellness queen or whatever term you may have heard. And I want to be really honest with you guys. Those labels, A, they're really intimidating to me, very, very intimidating. And B, they actually provide a lot of misconceptions. Okay, so a quick example, just to be very real with you. On Monday, and Jack can attest to this because he was there right before I got on to talk to the lovely group that was there, I got on camera with Jack and I told him, I said, I've got really big worries for tonight. My first worry is that only 2 people are going to show up. And I said, but if I'm really honest, I'm more worried that a lot of people will show up and I'm going to get really overwhelmed. Let's pause there. I shared with you 2 thoughts. Can anyone guess or tell me what thought distortions I was using? I'm worried a lot of people will show up and they'll get overwhelmed. And I'm worried no one will show up. Yeah, polarization. Is that all or nothing? That was one of them. There's a couple of different thought patterns that you can actually attribute to thoughts, which is interesting. Any other ideas? Catastrophizing. Yeah, I thought the worst was going to happen. I didn't come into that session even feeling a little bit like it was going to be okay. I either thought it was going to be awful because no one was going to show up, or it was going to be awful because I'd get overwhelmed. And I was also going through fortune telling. In that moment, I should have just been so present in that moment. Not should have. I could have been more present in that moment, just being it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah, I could have just been happy to be there. and whatever happens, happens. But instead, I was going in with worry. Now, Jack, I'm going to call you out here because you were so wise and so helpful. And truthfully, I feel like you should be the wellness king of our QT team because you are always grounding us as well. And in that moment, you kind of grounded me with truth. So I don't remember exactly what you said. To be honest, the adrenaline was pumping. But for now, I'll say that you said, paraphrasing, you said, if no one shows up, we're just going to record a secret podcast. It's not a big deal. And if a lot of people show up, they need what you're saying. So just do it. It's not a big deal. And immediately, honestly, guys, I felt better because he was so right. Like, what really could go wrong? My worries were not grounded in facts at all. Instead, they were grounded in fear. And once we had an A or a B, this could happen or this can happen, and it's going to work out regardless. The amygdala, right? Your fight, flight, freeze response, it all comes down. Exactly. That's why working in community is so important, because they can have that sounding board. But to be honest, while I was so grateful for Jack, I have to admit, I was actually really grateful for myself because I had the courage to voice those fears in the first place. Because honestly, I don't know if it's because we're educators and we're always carrying the heavy load for others, or because it's my childhood responsibilities as being a carer, or because I was a big sister, or what it was. But I feel like I spent so many years not telling people how I felt or what I needed. I felt like I needed to project this, I'm great all the time. I'm good all the time. You ask me how I'm okay, I'm good. I could be dying on the inside, but I would always tell you I'm okay. And it's taken me a really, really long time and a lot of conscious effort to be okay with being vulnerable. And in that moment, I was able to choose that vulnerability and tell Jack, look, these are my fears. And because I was able to be so honest with him, he was able to catch me in that moment and really support me through it. And so what I encourage you to do is remember that we're putting a label of me being the well-being lead, but it doesn't mean that I'm like impervious to feeling anxiety or worry or overwhelm or imposter syndrome or XYZ. What hopefully I can show you today more so is that the experience and the education and the commitment to keep going, even though it's really difficult, it helps to lessen the time that I have spending in those icky feelings of worry and thoughts and fears. It's not that I don't have them. It's that I could spend a little bit less time with them. So let's hop in then to the first topic, I guess, or the first distortion that I feel like many of us have talked about. And that one there is polarization, right? Like that idea of it's all yes or it's all no. I'd be so grateful if you guys unmuted yourself and just gave some feedback. Like if this is something that you're constantly, you can say, oh yeah, I do that a lot. Do you catch yourself in the moment? Or is it more being aware now? What's your relationship with your thoughts? It'd be fantastic to find out.
Oh, really funny. So whenever I have like a moment in my house, which is quite a lot, I'll be honest, my partner will always say, Karen, you're not being very mindful right now. So, and I'm aware of it, but we can't be perfect, right? Like perfection does not exist.
It does not exist. I love that.
But what I always tell myself when I start to have these thought processes is I always think my thoughts are not facts, and that little kind of buffer just kind of grounds me back to actually, what evidence do I have of this being real? And pretty often it's no evidence at all, because I'm making it all up in my head.
Yes, it's so true. And that's what I was hoping that this session would do for us, is just reinforce the fact that it's not that our thoughts are against us or they're trying to pull us into a rabbit hole of worry and fear. It's that a lot of the times our thoughts are grounded in fear. So for our thought in that moment, it feels real. And that's why the thought's going, because it's the amygdala reacting. It's that guard dog going through that fight, flight, freeze. But if we as the controller of the brain, or the however you want to see yourself as the person inside, if we can find a moment just to ground, then we can go and be more objective with those thoughts. I think that's fantastic. Anybody else have any feedback that they'd like to share?
I am the #1 black and white thinker, I think.
Okay.
There we go.
The label. Labeled you there.
I find it so difficult to see shades of grey, particularly around like fairness and things like that. I'm really like,
Yes.
You're either fair or you're not fair, you know?
Right.
So that like can be helpful relating to kids who are particularly neurodivergent kids who like really need like a black and white boundary, but it's not very helpful in the real world because, you know, outside of the context of supporting a young person, we're all very grey and moving and changing, and we're all different and we all have different ideas about things, and that's a lot sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's something that, I mean, I don't think we'll ever get to a point where we'll be able to eliminate these types of thought distortions. And quite frankly, I feel like it's what keeps us human. So I don't really know if I would want to. It keeps things interesting, keeps us on our toes, right? But it also allows us if we're willing to lean into that vulnerable moment, it allows us for really nice connection. Like I explained earlier, like Jack and I could have very easily just been like, yeah, you good? Yeah, good, cool. And then we wouldn't have had that really nice connection. So sometimes being able to identify those thoughts and verbalize them to people, it actually offers us that ability to lean into that human emotion or that ability to be human. Okay, so Karen, you actually led us really well into the next part of our session, and that's looking at the 3 different ways that mindfulness or using these tactics can help us to spend more time in emotions that are going to support us, not positive emotions, emotions that are going to support us. So the first way we can do it is to name it. And I don't necessarily mean name the emotion and name the feeling. While that is super important, right? Emotional literacy is a huge cornerstone for being able to express emotion. I actually mean name the voice inside your mind. I think sometimes it's so helpful to almost dissociate yourself from all of that icky talk. Okay, so for instance, my inner voice that is not always helpful is named Whitney. And when Whitney starts going on her little tangents of how I'm not good enough, I shouldn't be here, I experience anxiety, why am I a well-being lead? Whenever she starts to speak up, I can say to her, right, I hear you, but I'm in control. Like, I'm not going to lean into that. Exactly. Shut up, Whitney. Silencio, Bruno, right? Like, we need to be able to tell those thoughts that are not helpful. Okay, I got it. Thank you. I'm hearing you, but I'm moving forward. And so by naming it, exactly, we don't talk about Bruno. By naming it, we're actually able to create a bit more of a disconnect with those thoughts. And that's what it's about, right? It's about mindfulness. It's about creating space between the stimulus and the response. It's about giving yourself time to choose a response. Naming it creates space between you saying, I am, versus Whitney says this. So that's the first one.
But what do you do if your name's Karen and it's the most hated meme woman on the internet and you're a Karen within a Karen? It's really hard.
I can only imagine. Honestly, I think you need to find a new definition for your name, though. Not a new name, like give yourself more positive definitions and associations with your name.
Yeah, it's quite funny though. I just laugh it off. I am such a Karen, so it's perfect.
Your inner voice, though, doesn't have to be named Karen. It can be named whatever you want.
Okay.
I have no Whitneys in my life, so it was just an easy name to be like, come on, girl, come on. Distance. Okay, number 2 then is all about the truth rating. So this is actually what you mentioned earlier, Karen. You had said, like, you ask yourself, am I even grounding in truth here? So we look at the truth rating. If my thought is that I experience anxiety, so no one should consider me a well-being lead, why are they going to show up to my well-being sessions? Okay, well, what's the truth? Yeah, I experience anxiety, but okay, I've also done a lot of XYZ to support myself. I've done a lot of schooling, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of different things that I can say to myself to ground myself in the truth. And actually, the fact that I experience things allows me to be more empathetic, which means I'll have a very similar perspective as someone who might be also experiencing it. So by going through this process of just establishing, okay, well, what is the truth here? Like, what's the real narrative that we're looking at? It can also be about understanding those thought distortions. So if I'm saying, why are people going to spend time with me or give me credit? Then actually I'm starting to think, well, okay, I just turned into like 10-year-old Sarahlynn, who just walked into a brand new school for the umpteenth time. For those of you who don't know, went to 11 different schools before I was 14, new kid on the block. And I felt like it was like that little girl was coming back up. And that's really helpful because then I can go to my truth rating and I can say to myself, okay, this is little Sarahlynn talking. It's not adult Sarahlynn. It's not present day Sarahlynn who's done the work and done the progress. So lean into having those conversations with your inner Whitney or your inner person. And then the last one that is probably one of my most favorite is to rewrite it. And this is through cognitive behavior therapy. So for a little bit of a recap on CBT, they're like the schooling is grounded in the belief that there are thoughts, feelings, and actions, and that they all kind of create a triangle. And our thoughts and our feelings are going to impact the actions that we take, right? If I believed my thought of no one's going to understand or give me credit, then my action could have been that I'm going to decline when I was asked to present. And then I would have just created a perpetual thought pattern. But instead, I decided to spend time in my truth, identify that it was Whitney talking, and then I was able to actually rewrite the story. And so I was able to understand that actually, if my thought is that I'm going to show up knowing that me being experienced means I can be empathetic, means I can hold space for others, then I can then go through the action of showing up for others. But that doesn't happen unless we're cognizant of it and we're allowing ourselves to become aware of the narrative that's going on a lot of the times below the surface. A lot of the times we have so many thoughts and we have no idea that we're having them. So rewriting doesn't always mean that we just do it in our mind. For me, the most important or most powerful way to start this process is to physically grab your journal, open it up to a new page, and just write down all of the thoughts that you have about yourself. And if you can start writing those things down, you might realize that there are things in there that are distorted, that are not grounded in truth, or that may have been truthful 10 years ago, but you are a different person, right? You've gone through more experiences that are allowing you to reshape who you are constantly. And so what may have been true for you then may not be true for you now. So by writing down your inner dialogue or writing down your thought patterns, you're going to be able to see very clearly the thoughts that you have. And then the best part, the most fun part, I think, is grabbing another color pen, erasing it or scratching it out, and underneath it, rewriting something that is truthful. Not blowing smoke, not being like, I am the best at math ever, when I know I'm not. But rewriting something, saying to myself, the fact that I wasn't good and I got tutored allows me to see where children are going to go wrong. It allows me to identify the thoughts that they might have, the feelings they could have, and that's a strength. It's not over the top. It's not bigging myself up to a point where I've got too much of a hothead. It's recalibrating my thoughts to realize that actually that thought had no weight, or it shouldn't hold any weight because it's no longer true. So the rewriting it process is actually a really powerful skill to go through, or a really powerful activity to go through. And I actually go through this on a termly basis because I feel like, I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm learning so much by working with students. And as a business owner, and we're, as a society and as a world, we're going through so much change right now that I feel like if I don't take that time to reflect on my thought processes, I'm just going to keep blindly going with my own bias, my own perspective, my own what have you. And so every term I sit down and I do what's called I do morning pages every day, but I intentionally do morning pages for this. Does anybody know what morning pages are? No. Morning pages is a method of journaling. It's like a stream of thought conscious journaling. You just open the page in the morning and you just write. There's no journal prompt. There's no end goal. There's no expectation. You just write 5 pages. You can write more, you can write less, but the goal is, I know I saw your face there, Mary Jane, you're like 5 pages. Yeah, 5 pages. We just write it down and we will have a stream of consciousness happen. And the more you write, the more you'll realize that you're no longer thinking about what you're writing. You're just writing down what's in your mind. And this has 2 benefits for it. One is that you can go back and read it and identify where those thought distortions are and then spend time rewriting. But also 2, by doing it in the morning, you're actually allowing yourself to dry or wipe that slate clean. I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel like I wake up and I've had a bad dream or I've had something, and it's a really hard feeling to shift. I have bad dreams quite often, actually. And I feel like if I don't take the time to write out all of my thoughts and feelings and what happened in the dream and all of that, I feel like I hold it with me all day. And I would much rather be able to find a way to leave that dream in the dream where it belongs and actually live my life in the present, choosing to be grounded in feelings that make me feel positive and empowered. So going through morning pages or journaling in another way is a really powerful tool to allow us to let go of those thoughts and those feelings that don't support us and move forward with thoughts that do. I think it was actually in Kate King's presentation, she was talking, or maybe actually it might have been Dina's, she was talking about waking up with a choice to be able to decide what emotion you're going to feel that day. And I loved that, being able to positively label yourself that day, and be able to not let what's happened in the evening or the night before or the day before. No problem, Karen, thank you so much for being here. We're not allowing those things to cloud what we are going to continue doing throughout the day. So I know there was a lot, and I appreciate that there wasn't visuals and a beautiful PowerPoint, but hopefully you guys were able to pull from there that we all have thought distortions. Our distortions might be different for everyone. So being aware of them allows us to identify them in others and hold space for them as they go through it. And then lastly, being able to come up with those 3 ways to really help switch those thought distortions. So by naming it, right, Whitney, thank you, but no. 2 was rating it. Is it truthful? Does it hold any factual evidence? Like, where is my proof? And then 3 is rewriting it. So whether you do it through morning pages, journaling, I know people sometimes, if they're having a really bad day, will voice record themselves and then listen back. Because when we say things out loud, it tends to be stream of conscious thinking sometimes as well. right? If you're just kind of in a mood, you stream of conscious, just speak to yourself out loud, and then hearing it back can also be a very powerful tool, because a lot of times you're shocked by what you hear yourself saying. So that's my presentation. I'd love to hear your takeaways if you're happy to share. Any volunteers? I know, I feel like I've given you guys so much to think about. I know. Maybe we just need to take a collective breath together. Good.
I have a lot of negative self-talk, which I switch around when I'm tutoring.
Yes.
And I don't do it to myself, which is ridiculous, really.
It's ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How do you think then, Mary Jane, you could use the same kind of loving approach that you have with your students? How do you think you could switch that thought behavior for yourself?
I've just given it a name.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I know where it comes from.
Good. Good. That knowledge is so powerful. And I think by even just identifying the fact that, yeah, I have a lot of negative self-talk, it empowers us to make choices whereby if we're not aware, or we don't allow ourselves to be aware, then it's almost like we can't take responsibility and we can't then help ourselves. So I love that you've named it. I hope it helps.
I only just thought of the name now, but has got something to do with my mother.
Okay.
So she's no longer here.
Yeah.
And I have no embarrassment by saying that.
Good, as you shouldn't. This is such a safe space. And I don't think you were with us on Monday, Mary Jane, but the QT festival, I'm sure you've noticed by now, is all about such vulnerability, because that vulnerability and that honesty, it really allows us to connect. And as educators, that is the foundational skills and activities that we do. I appreciate you sharing.
Sorry if I look a bit odd. I've got a dog that's just about to potentially get onto my laptop. So I'm going to go off mute, and I will be changing computers for the next session.
Okay. I love that.
I can see he'll be putting his paw onto the screen.
That's so sweet. He's like, I'm here for you. I hear you. I love that.
Oh no, he's gone away for the time being.
He's keeping you on your toes though, isn't he?
Yeah, he does.
We love pet appearance. You can join in, but just don't let him shut the call off.
Yeah. Perfect. Anybody else have anything they'd like to share? Any gems, any questions? I've given you guys so much. If there's a
That's
question.
really useful. Thank you very much, Sarahlynn. I kind of, one thought that occurred to me is it was really helpful to hear your description of kind of putting those labels on you and how that impacts you. So yeah, I would add that obviously we think that you're brilliant, but probably more because we don't expect you to be perfect. You kind of make us more comfortable with not being perfect, which is lovely. And I noticed myself that I have like lots of negative thoughts that kind of come unprompted and spontaneously, and I'll catch myself and think, oh, that was so cruel. Imagine saying that to somebody else. Oh, what horrible thoughts I had. And like to like they'll happen, and I know that they're going to pop into my head, but to interrupt it, and I try then say it out loud, as you say, the truth of it. It's very difficult to do sometimes, but catching it and switching it over with the truth has made it a lot less frequent. It's very useful.
Good. I love that. I love the fact that you can actually see it come in, and then you say like, that's cruel. Like, I don't want to say that to someone else, so why would I say it to myself? It's upholding a boundary for yourself as well, which is why I think it's becoming less and less, because the stronger you come, you become and upholding a boundary for yourself, right? And Helen, you guys will laugh at this. So for those of you who don't know, we were talking about boundaries a couple of weeks ago in our QT wellbeing just chat. And the notepad that I actually wrote this on actually has the no that we talked about saying, right? About being confident with being able to say no to people and upholding boundaries. And I
did
actually
a postcard, didn't we? We all need to carry a postcard with a great big no on it.
Yes, so you can
to
say
put
it.
up to say no.
And actually, after that conversation, I now have this on my desk. And it's such a lovely reminder that it's okay to have those boundaries, that it's actually respecting myself and it's not disrespecting anyone else. It's creating boundaries, creates freedom, because then they know what they can expect of me. So your brain, Georgina, is also appreciating the fact that you're saying, that's cruel, we don't want that here. And it's creating the expectation that your brain is not going to keep putting those thoughts in your mind.
It's good to think about these things as well when we're not in the middle of the moment, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
To process it, even put some of those things in, thinking it through ahead of the time, so that when we're in the middle of whatever catastrophe, well, probably not a catastrophe, but hey ho, whatever it is that's going on, that we can bring back what we've put into place early. It's easier to retrieve it. Am I digging as many words as I can from sessions over the festival so far?
No, I do. I love that. I feel like the greater the habit, the stronger the habit, the easier it is to pull upon it when we actually need it. So for instance, my partner and I were talking about mindfulness, and we've had a very stressful session, like a couple of days ago, we had a very stressful day. Oh my God. Distraction by the dog. So cute. I love these pet appearances. But we were talking about how being mindfulness doesn't take away our fear or our worry or the stress of that moment. Instead, it allowed us to be more calm down a bit quicker. So then we can make better decisions. But 5 years ago, before mindfulness practice, I don't think either of us would have had the headspace to handle what we handled in that moment. I think it's because of the fact that we practice outside preventative care, right? We don't want reactive care. We want preventative care. Amazing. Right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today. Thank you for the pet appearances. We've got a teddy bear and a cat, and I'm loving all of these anyway. And I hope that you all go forward feeling super empowered with your thoughts and excited to name your inner monkey, your person who's taking away that joy. Over to you, Georgina.